Hello, Mr. Rice, your remote narrator back with some more sentence diagramming. This time we're going to take on some compound subjects and compound verbs. As you can see here, we're not starting on the usual screen because I want to give you kind of a basic concept to go with before we begin diagramming. So I'm going to start with our 2020 NCAA tournament bracket. Too soon? As you can see, it's blank, but let's use our imagination for a moment and say that there actually was a tournament this year. What would it have looked like? Well, we'll zero in on that top section. I think it would have looked something like this, with Kansas in the 1 seed, Winthrop in the 16, LSU in the 8, and Arizona in the 9. Right now, as of this point, all of these teams are considered equal. Yes, they might have been seeded higher or lower, but until the game is played, they are on an equal level, and you can see that equal level right there. That's how brackets work. Once I decide which one wins, I can then move it on. So if I think Arizona is going to win, I can move them on to the next part of the bracket, and if I think that Kansas will win, then I can move them on to the next part of the bracket, and at that point, Kansas and Arizona would be considered equal and until one of them had won the game, and then they would move on to the next part of the bracket. So that's how brackets work. Brackets essentially show equality. These things have the same value. They're an extension of that same line. So that line is basically breaking into parts there and also there, extending to the center. So why is it important to know what brackets are or how they work? Because essentially that's what you're going to need to know when you are creating a compound diagram. You have a subject and another subject that are of equal value, or you have a verb and another verb that are of equal value, and you have to show that those are on the same level. So let's look at our sentence for this week. We have Umberto and Angela opened the front door and walked across the yard. Now, as I pointed out the last time with prepositional phrases, I want to identify that first and set it aside so that I don't use that when I'm diagramming the rest of the sentence. So I'm going to go ahead and set that apart now. And now I know across the yard is going to come at the very end. Now let's look at the rest of the sentence. Have Umberto and Angela opened the front door and walked. As always, I want to find my verb first. So I look up here for an action and I see, opened. But if I continue to look, I'll also notice that walked is an action. I have both opened and walked. Now these can't be part of a mashed up verb phrase because neither of them is a helping verb. They are both independently action verbs of their own. So I need to give each of them independently their own line as the verb. After I have done that, I'm going to ask the question, who or what opened and walked for my subject. And once again, I have two different things. I have Umberto opened and walked, and Angela opened and walked. So I'm going to need to have a line for each of those as well. That's where my bracket comes into play. And voila, there is a bracket on the left side and on the right side. Of course, I still need to separate the subject and verb, so I still need to put the line through the center. Ultimately, the center should look the same. There's my baseline, and there's the line that separates it that creates the plus. The only difference now is that the verb side is now split into two, and the subject side is now split into two equal parts. So I'm going to take those different parts of the verb, opened and walked, and place those on those parts of the line. And then I'm going to take the subject, Umberto, and the other subject, Angela, and place those on the subject side of the line. So they're of equal importance now. Umberto and Angela opened and walked. Now you might be asking, okay, but what about your ands? You have two ands there. And yes, I need to show where my conjunctions go. So I'm going to make two little dotted lines to fill in the little triangle at the end of each of these brackets. Now with that little triangle there, I can place my conjunction inside, and I'll do the same over here. And there we go. Now I have Umberto and Angela opened and walked. I still have a little bit more to my sentence. Opened what? I've got my direct object there. Verb plus whom or what. So I'll extend my line and bring down the little separator for the direct object that just goes perpendicular to the line. Also put in some lines for my modifiers over here. And so opened what? Opened door. Which door was it? It was the door. What kind of door was it? It was a front door. All right, and now all I'm left with is my prepositional phrase. So I've got to ask the question across the yard, where Umberto and Angela walked. So it needs to go under walked as an adverb phrase. So I'll first take across, move it down underneath walked, showing the direction. Across what? Yard. Which yard was it? The yard. And now I have a properly diagrammed compound sentence with compound subject and compound verb, as well as direct object and modifiers and prepositional phrase. So lots of different things attached if you ever run across some more complicated types of sentences like that. Now you may be asking, Mr. Rice, this is great. However, I only have a compound subject, or I only have a compound verb. What if I only had Umberto opening and walking and not Angela? In that case, I can still have the opened up bracket on the right side, but make it a regular line on the other. In that case, Umberto opened the front door and walked across the yard. And the same is true if you were to want to make it a verb with a compound subject instead. So that Umberto and Angela did the first action, opened the door, and not the walking across the yard. I keep my bracket on the left side where the subject is, and I can just get rid of everything else and move open down there, as well as the direct object and its modifiers. So now I have Umberto and Angela opened the front door. So that's how to diagram compound verbs and compound subjects. If you got any questions, hit me in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer your questions there. Until next time, bye. I am back. One more thing I almost forgot. What if you had a correlative conjunction? That's when you have something like both and or either or. So if I had both Umberto and Angela opened the front door and walked across the yard, what do I do with the both? And it's really easy. All you got to do is put it on the other side of your regular conjunction. So I have and over here, I have both on this side. Both and. There you go. All right, bye for real.
Where's my